You're listening to Retail Disrupted, a podcast that explores the latest industry developments and the trends that will shape how we shop in the future. I'm your host, Natalie Berg. Hello and welcome back to Retail Disrupted. On today's episode, we're going to be hearing from the head of AI at Kingfisher. But before we do that, we are going to be talking about payments. I've teamed up with WorldPay to bring you some insights from their new Global Payments Report. This is the 10th edition of the report, and it is filled with fascinating insights and predictions on how the payment landscape is evolving. So, I'm going to spend the first few minutes of today's episode sharing 3 key findings that stood out for me. Firstly, digital payments. This is an area that's seen explosive growth over the past decade, and there is no sign of this letting up. Digital payments grew from 34% of global e-commerce value in 2014 to 66% in 2024, precisely reversing shares with cash and cards. By 2030, digital payments will account for nearly 80% of global e-commerce value. This includes digital wallets, account-to-account, buy now, pay later, and cryptocurrencies. Consumers are also getting more comfortable reaching for their phones at the till. The share of digital payments in stores went from just 3% of global transaction value in 2014 to 38% in 2024. I don't think we can refer to this as an alternative payment anymore. It's become the norm, and it's really a reflection of the digital era that we live in today. Consumers want convenience, ease, frictionless experiences, and more personalization. The report also looks at the impact of smartphones more generally, and we all know that in retail, this has been one of the biggest sources of disruption in history. It's easy to forget just how much has changed over the past decade. In 2014, less than 20% of global e-commerce sales took place on a mobile phone. Do you remember we used to be able to browse on our phones, but if we wanted to pay for something, we had to use a laptop or a desktop? So hard to imagine. Today, mobile makes up 57% of transaction value of global e-commerce sales. It has fundamentally transformed the world of retail, the world of payments, and, of course, consumer expectations. Consumers today are ubiquitously connected, hyper-informed, and empowered to shop on their terms. Now, as we all know, technology moves quickly, and longer term, we could see the smartphone dethroned as things like wearables and biometric payments become more credible alternatives. In the meantime, what does this mean for more traditional forms of payment like cash and cards? Well, my second takeaway from the report is that cards are still wildly relevant, and that's primarily because of their role within digital wallets. WorldPay's survey revealed that 56% of global consumers use cards to fund their digital wallets. We're also seeing a lot of innovation coming from the card networks, offering installment payments and more streamlined experiences for consumers. The world is changing, but with disruption comes innovation. In fact, by 2030, MasterCard will have phased out manual card entry in Europe. The final thing I want to share with you is the story with cash. As you'd expect, this is a little bit more nuanced. Globally, cash use is still in decline, but it's happening at a slower rate now. Cash remains the leading in-person payment method in Colombia, Indonesia, Japan, Mexico, Nigeria, Peru, Philippines, Spain, and Vietnam. Even in markets like the Nordics, which is probably the closest thing we have to a cashless society, even there, WorldPay is predicting a floor of point-of-sale cash use of around 4% of transaction value. Cash appears to be a timeless economic utility. If you'd like to learn more about global and regional trends and insights across 40 markets, along with future payment predictions, you can click the link in the show notes to download WorldPay's Global Payments Report. Today, I am bringing you a conversation I had with Mohsen Ghasempour, who is the Group Director of AI at Kingfisher. Kingfisher, as many of you know, runs B&Q, Screwfix, and TradePoint here in the UK, and also Castorama, Brico Dépôt, and Costas across Europe. Mohsen is a distinguished expert in the field of artificial intelligence with a solid academic foundation, holding a PhD in computer science. He has over 15 years of experience as an accomplished data scientist and visionary leader. Before joining Kingfisher, Mohsen held roles at the Hut Group and Shop Direct, where he spearheaded cross-functional teams to implement cutting-edge machine learning and AI solutions, resulting in measurable and transformative outcomes. This conversation was recorded at the Retail Technology Show press briefing. The show is next week, as many of you know. I know a lot of you are going to be there. Mohsen will also be there. He's going to be on stage next week, next Thursday, I believe. So if you are heading to the show, make sure you go and check out his talk. Okay, that's enough from me. Let's get started. Mohsen, welcome to the podcast. Tell us a little bit more about your role and maybe a few words about Kingfisher's relationship with AI.
Yeah, so first of all, thank you for having me. My name is Mohsen Ghasempour. I am Group AI Director at Kingfisher, parent company of B&Q and Screwfix. So around 3 years ago, we established a central AI function to support the vision of our banners to achieve their strategic goal through the AI technology. And since then, we developed and deployed many AI services across the business. So from our recommendation engine to Screwfix Lens, which is released last week, we continually deliver this type of technology to improve both our colleagues and also customer experience.
Yeah, and I actually spoke to your group digital director on the podcast a few months ago. I know he's now left the business, but it was a really interesting conversation about all the things that you guys are doing at Kingfisher: marketplaces, rapid delivery, retail media, and of course we also talked a lot about AI. So it's great to have the opportunity to go deeper into that topic with you today. I'd love to know, from your perspective, where do you see the biggest opportunities for AI? Because I guess AI is doing two things. One, it's making retailers more operationally efficient, and two, it's improving the experience for the customers. So maybe we can break that down and first talk about how you're using AI on the back end and some of the efficiencies that you're gaining as a result.
Yeah, absolutely. As you mentioned, even within Kingfisher, we have a clear kind of focus on those two areas: how we improve colleagues and of course the customer experience. So when we look at back-end operation, we have many AI services. So one of which is quite a big one, is a project called Markdown and Promotions. And that's a project that we're using AI heavily to optimize the markdown and promotional activity across our banners, which is processing millions of data points within a couple of minutes, providing the recommendation to our colleagues. And in all of those use cases, the focus is how you can empower the colleague to use this type of technology to deliver, right? So another example is our former marketplace growth. So we have a very ambitious growth on marketplace, and I think we briefly discussed before the session that so we went from 55,000 product to more than 1 million product when we launched our marketplace on DIY.com. So of course that put a lot of pressure on our internal operation, right? So and how we built the AI to help in the content moderation service to empower the colleague to do that product onboarding more efficiently.
Yeah, that's really interesting. And from a customer experience perspective, I know you guys are doing a lot with AI chatbots, personalized recommendations, visual search, that's hard to say. Yeah. Can you give us a flavor of how you're using AI to enhance the experience for customers?
Yeah, so again, on that side, I think we have two aspects. So one is quite well mature AI technology, which is well understood by the public, which is recommendation engine or personalization, and you see it all the online businesses. So you go buy a drill, we recommend you drill bits, you want paint, you want paintbrush. So that's, of course, we started a couple of years ago, in-house recommendation engine, and that's a big part of our business, attributing a lot into our online sales. But also there are piece of technology which is quite new, and some of them is to bring more convenience to our customer, and a very good example of that is Screwfix Lens, which is to support our trade customer. So we release this visual search technology that can, you can search product with the visual aspect when you are on site, to bring, again, to make the shopping more convenient, right? So, and when we're talking about generative AI more specifically, so it's a quite unknown technology. So, of course, we've been one of the pioneers. So, we release our genAI powered chatbot on top of Athena platform, which is our in-house framework. We call it Hello Casto for Customer France. It went live in December 2023, right? Mm-hmm. So, and when you look at the younger generation, and we discussed that briefly again, about how the sales behavior or the purchase behavior can be different. Some of them maybe expect to have these type of technologies to do the shopping rather than a more traditional way of searching for a product, right? So again, we observing a massive amount of data coming through those platforms that hopefully can lead the way for the future development in our AI.
Yeah, and it's interesting what you said about the education piece, because I think in your category especially, there's a huge opportunity to inspire and educate shoppers. But also, just to reiterate what you were saying about the different needs from the next generation of shoppers. They'll be expecting that kind of experience, that kind of service from retailers. So really interesting to see that evolve. Test and learn are three words that come up a lot on this podcast. Can you share any learnings based on your experience as head of AI?
I mean, our last 2 years was full of learning, and is interesting you call that test and learn, because we do have a test and learn with AI pillar specifically. So, which as part of that, and that's supported by our group CEO Thierry. So, as part of that, we can run a small short initiatives of trying AI technology, right? Because it's quite new, and the idea here is how you can apply the technology and see the result of that, right? And then, to see where it works. So Hello Casto specifically, again, because it's quite new, it was full of learning. Mm-hmm. In terms of, okay, you build in the technology and you have a very innocent way of like, okay, we're going to do this and this is how people are going to use it. Mm. And then as soon as you start and you see, so there are so many different ways that people can use that probably they either shouldn't or you never thought about that, right? So, and I think that particular one not only was a learning for us as a group AI team, but it was a massive learning for a business or compliance team or legal team. One of the big learning, I would say, came out of that was normally when we do all the other AI projects, so we go and get the final approval from your legal team or compliance team. So that dynamic completely changed when you look at more emerging technology like generative AI, because then your compliance and legal team should be part of your development team. They have to come along the journey. So you're learning together, you learn what is right, what is wrong, all the AI ethics around that. So there is no single source of truth, because you know the technology well, legal and compliance team know the rules well. So it's not going to be the isolation process, right? It should be a combined joint process. So I think most of learning probably is around setting the right process in place to work with the other team to deliver the good AI services.
That's really interesting, and I guess probably challenging for any business to stay on top of something that's moving so quickly, but still, needing to, of course, to be on top of the legal side of things as well and the ethical side of things. So an interesting space. I wanted to ask you about consumers. You sort of talked about how consumers are, especially younger consumers, are engaging with AI chatbots. What's your take on how consumers are adopting this technology? Obviously, we're using ChatGPT more, we're relying on it more, and trusting it more, in my perspective. So how has the kind of broader shift towards using AI, genAI in our everyday lives, how has that impacted what customers are expecting when they come into a store or when they're shopping online?
As you mentioned, is a cultural shift, right? So you saying that we're trusting ChatGPT more or Google technology, right? So, but if you look at those technology a year ago, so that was massively different, right? So, and that means even the companies providing those technology, they just keep improving. That means you get to trust them more, right? The same thing is for customer, but again, you're looking at a bit of traditional way of shopping experience, and then suddenly you just give them a chatbot. So you don't really tell them how to use them. Some people, as I mentioned, use it like a search engine, right? Just put a very specific, I need 100 millimeter drill or whatever, right? Drill bits. So it's going to take time for people to grasp. And as you mentioned, more people use general chat GPT type or Gemini general use case. The expectation going to be like, oh, I now want to see that. And for example, our kids, so I think probably they're going to have a completely different way of searching on our e-commerce platform, right? So they do expect, that's going to be the expectation rather than a nice feature, right, for an organization.
Yeah, and so I've got a 12 and a 9-year-old, and they're Gen Alpha, and they're not that far away from making purchases themselves. So we do need to be thinking about the next generation. I want to ask you about sustainability. This came up earlier today, and I wonder if you could share your thoughts here again for our listeners. How are you measuring the environmental impact of your AI initiatives?
Yeah, so of course this is not all about AI, it's about all the piece of engineering work you put. But at Kingfisher, we've been lucky that internally we've been working very closely with the sustainable team and especially architecture team. And we were one of the first team that launched a live report of carbon footprint, which is associated with all the AI services. So, I mean, that doesn't mean that necessarily we are reducing the carbon footprint, but I think that's the first step, especially on the AI, because you have to measure before be able to, act, right? And at the moment, any services that we deploy, we know exactly how much going to be the carbon footprint. And as a result of that, you can have some informed decision, architectural decision, very deep down on the engineering side, that when you want to build the AI service and just say, oh, I can build it in two ways. In both ways, from customer point of view, they see the same impact. But one, if I go following one specific approach, probably it's going to be 20% more efficient when it comes to the carbon footprint, right? So, but yeah, that's mostly around building the actual AI service. But on the other thread is all these AI services designed to improve the efficiency of part of the organization. As a result of that efficiency improvement, if you can just improve the efficiency by 30%, that also translates to the reducing the carbon footprint somewhere in the business.
Yeah, that makes sense. So gaining those operational efficiencies will make you more sustainable.
Exactly.
This is such a fast-moving space, as the last 10 minutes have sort of illustrated. As we look ahead to the future, as head of AI at Kingfisher, what are you excited about?
Yeah, so it may not be that obvious, to be honest, but agentic AI, right, is a term that come up more and more, right? Of course, there is a bit of hype around that. But what it says is like an AI system that can automate a process and have a degree of decision making, right? So which that part is exciting, but is there already, right? So one thing which I think we have to, especially in our position, to be mindful of. So we really need to connect those AI services to current internal infrastructure. In order to achieve the actual automation or efficiency, it's not just about the smart or intelligent bit of AI. It's about interconnectivity of existing services, which some of them are legacy, right? So I think that's going to be a lot of discussion internally for us, how we can be prepared for the age of agentic AI, because I think the technology is going to solve the automation part, but in the back end, how you can connect it to make the actual action happen, I think is the key, which we have to work on.
Yeah, such an exciting time. Mohsen, thank you so much for your time. It's been really interesting to get your thoughts.
Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you for listening to Retail Disrupted. If you enjoyed this episode and would like to support the podcast, please leave a rating or review or share it with others. It really makes a difference.